Hi everyone, myself Sudhamaniam. Today we will discussing about form control elements. Objectives of form control elements is to understand the concept of form in HTML, to understand about different controlling forms, to understand about the different attributes of form in HTML, to understand about the form tags which is used in HTML. HTML form. An HTML form is a section of a document containing normal content, markup, special elements called controls. It's basically called checkboxes, radio buttons, menus, text areas, text, etc. And labels on those controls. Users generally completely form by modify its controls, entering text, selecting menu items, etc. before submitting the form to an agent for processing, for example to a web server, to a mail server, and so on. Attributes of form: action, method, target. Action describes the backend script ready to process your passed data. Method is used to upload the data. The most frequently used are get and post methods. Target, especially the target window or form where the result of the script will be displayed. It makes values link blank, cell for parent, etc. HTML forms control. There are different types of forms control that you can use to collect the data using HTML forms, that are text input control, submit button or click table button controls or image button. Checkboxes control, radio box controls, drop down list or select controls, field setter, grouping from controls, HTML output tag, file upload controls, some other input types attributes in form. First we'll discussing about text input controls. Input text controls are used to collect user data as a free text on the web page. It will form a rectangle box where users can input the data. There are different types of input text controls that can be used in the HTML form. There are three types of text input used in forms. Single line text input controls. This controls is used to for items that require only one line user input, such as search boxes or names. They are created using HTML input tag. This allows the user to enter only one single line of data. A typical example of such input text control is for entering the name, search box, city, for etc. Password input control. This is also single line text input, but it makes the character as soon as user enters it. They are also created using HTML input tag. As the name suggests, this is typically used for the password field. This works in the same way of input text field, but the text gets marked as safety purposes. Multi-line text input control. This is used to when the user is required to give details that may be longer than the single sentence. Multi-line input controls are created using HTML text area tag. This input control type allows the user to enter the data of multiple lines. Typical using such input controls is from comments, address, description, and so on. Attributes of text input. Type. Common for all controls. It indicates the type of input control, and for a text input control it will be set to text. Name. Common for all controls, used to give a name to the control which send the server to the recognized and get the value. Value, common for all controls. This is can used to provide an initial value inside the control. Size, common for text, password and text area. Allow to specify the width and the text input control in terms of characters. Max length, common for text, password and text area, allows to specify the maximum number of characters. User can enter into the text box. Rows, used to multi-line controls, indicates the number of rows of text area box. Columns, used for multiple line controls, indicate the number of columns of text area boxes. First we had single line text input control. This is the example of single line text input control. We can declare the two text boxes, and we can provide the name as user ID and password. Password input type is test and name is UID. User ID is also same. Second one is button input control. A submit button is used to send the form data into the web server. When submit button is clicked, the form data is sent to the file specified in the form's action attribute to process the submit data. A reset button resets all the form's control to default value. Submit. From submit button easily send the form data to the script that it was specified in the action attributes of the form tag. Reset. The reset button type is used to reset the content of forms to their original values. This means that each form field will change back to the value it had when the form loaded, either null or empty, or the default value set within the value attribute. Button. This creates a button that used to trigger client-side script when user clicks the button. Image. This creates a clickable button but we can use the image as background of the button. It is used some other attribute like src. This attribute used to set the image and button width, set the width of image height, set the height of image border, set the border of image align, set the alignment of image button, h space set h space of image, v space set v space of image. This is the example of button click. It can be use the user ID and password, go form reset button click and pay. And you can use the label for password. Input type is submit, name go, value go. Input type is reset value. It can be used form reset. Input type image, name, value, pay and click. Pay to click, it can click the button, it can send the data to the server. This is the example of button click. Checkbox control. The checkbox lets the user select whatever information is true in this case. It is very convenient way of accepting the data when the possible input is already known. For example, if you want to select your hobbies, so the checkbox is good into control selection your hobbies. Checkboxes are used to more than one option is required to select. Checked. So set to checked if you want to select by default. This is the example of checkbox. When we are using the checkbox, we can give the more information and more checkboxes, but we can click only. It can take only one input. This is the example of checkbox. Next one is radio button controls. Radio buttons are used to when you expected user to fill data as the boolean value, or you expect only one input true out of multiple options. Some common use case of radio buttons is gender determination, which is male or female, and employee type or regular, ad hoc or visit, and so on. Radio buttons are used to when out of many options that options is required to be selected. Checked. Set to checked if you want to select it by default. It is the example of radio button. We can declare the input type is radio, name, gender, ID male, and input type radio and name, gender ID is female. And next paragraph is employee type. Input type radio and name is type, value is R1. Input type is radio, name is equal to type, value is it is ad hoc. Input type is radio, name type is value we are visiting. We can close the form and body HTML tag. It can be click the one button. It can give the only one radio button. Drop down list. A drop down list or abbreviated drop down is also known as drop down menu. Drop menu, full down list, pick list is a graphical control element similarly list box that allows the user choose one value from the list. When drop down list is inactive, it displays a single value. Attribute ID, select ID. It defines which from the drop-down list belongs to. Multiple. The HTML select multiple attributes is a boolean attribute. It specifies the user ID allowed to select more than one value in present select element. Name defines the name for drop-down list. Required specify the user required to select a value before submitting a form. Number defines the number of visible options in drop-down list. This is the example of drop-down list. We can H1 is header field, title or header field. Drop-down list example. P it is a paragraph. Drop-down list is created to the list. Label for its state. It select the state. Select ID is equal to state option value UP, MP, Delhi, Chhattisgarh. It can be chose the multiple states. We can choose the one state. Field. The next one is field set. The field set tag is HTML5. It is used to make a group of related elements in the form and it creates the box over the element. The field set tag is new in HTML5. The HTML field set tag is found within the forms tag and it is used to group related commands in HTML form. Use a legend tag to create caption from the field set. This tag is also commonly referred to the field set element. Align left attribute is align. The value is left, right, center, top, bottom. It describes the deprecated specify the content alignment. Desired label. It specifies the group of related form elements should be disabled. Form ID. It specifies form which belongs to field set. Name. Test specify the name field set. It is the example of field sets. We can give the title field set tag used to group box or box. Next one is HTML output tag. The output tag is one of the HTML file element. It defines a placer representing the result of a calculation performed by a script or user interaction with a form element or form tag. Or the output tag is defined in the complex calculation new tag in HTML file and it requires a starting and end tag. Attribute and description. For this attribute contains an attribute value of element ID which is used to specifying the relation between result and calculation. Form. This attribute contains the attribute value and form ID which is used to specifying the one or more forms of output elements. Name. This attribute contains attribute values name which is used to specifying the name of output element and input. This attribute uses to store the input value from the control. This is the example of output tag where we enter the marks. It can add the all subjects where give the Hindi marks in 44, English marks is 22, chemistry marks is 44, physics marks is 55 and history marks is 17. Sum of 5 subject marks is 242. This is the example of output tag. This is the example of output tag. This process is called form based attributes. This is